Hi everyone, how are you? We are glad to have our first meetup in English ever. So we are CaquiCoders, a Brazilian community a group of developers who organize events in a city near São Paulo. We have online events as well. That's the events number 36 already. Today we are going to talk about Microsoft technologies, Power Apps, and Azure Cognitive Service, demonstrating how to extract text from images and other features. Feel free to leave your questions in the live chat section. And if you don't know about the community or wants to subscribe to the next events, please check our links on the social media. I'm gonna put in the description of the video the Facebook group, the LinkedIn page profile, and the WhatsApp group. Feel free to join, even if are not Brazilian at all. Feel free to join because we are glad to have you in the community as a participant. And for the next events that we organize, probably in 3 months, we will provide call for papers that it's open not only for Brazilians but for international speakers as well to know more about the next events. Follow the links, all the profiles from the community in Facebook, LinkedIn, and Meetup, and enjoy the events. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the live chat channel. Thank you. Douglas will start the first presentations. Have a good talk, Douglas.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating.
Yes. Hello, guys. How are you doing with all this craziness? Let's talk about technologies here. I'm gonna share my screen and show you guys some more stuff. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Alexandre, for the opportunity and for the community. I'm gonna share my screen. Thing. If you guys have any issues with the sound, just let me know. Can you see my screen? Can you give me a feedback?
Okay, I can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so my name is Douglas Romão. I'm from Brazil, so from São Paulo. I'm an MVP in Office Apps and Services. So my main focus in the MVP program is Office 365, but I work a lot with Power Platform stuff. I will probably going to start uh, being an MVP in business application soon about it because I turn it a little bit. So that's why I have these two things. Today we are going to talk about some tips that I have for you guys that are starting working with Power Apps. So if you want to build powerful apps with Power Apps, I have some tips that I want to share with you. It's basically some knowledge that I've been getting around from these last 2 years that I've been working with Power Apps. And if you guys see, this is not a PPT, is not a PowerPoint presentation. It's built inside Power Apps. So this is how much I love Power Apps. So these are my contacts. If you want to add me in LinkedIn or Twitter or any social media, just let me know. Just get there. This QR code will give you some more information. I'm also a CCO and partner at Trenting. It's a company here in Brazil that works with Office 365 implementation and Power Platform, not only for Brazil, but outside as well. So feel free to join me in LinkedIn or YouTube. I have a channel talking more about Power Platform, but I have also other videos there. So feel free. Later on, you'll be able to see this video. So just join me there. So let's start. I'll just give some these 10 tips, and I'll use some phrases to talk about each one of these tips, and then I'll give some practice about it, because I don't want only to talk about, but also to show some stuff about it. So the first tip that I have for you when you are building Power Apps. So if you guys don't know what is Power Apps, just to give you an overview, Power Apps is a platform from Microsoft. It's inside this group called Power Platform, that is based on Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. And the Power Apps is a platform to create mobile apps, not only mobile, web apps as well. And this is a way that Microsoft gives you as a business user, or you don't need to be a developer. You can be an IT guy or a business user, and then you can create these apps, connect these apps with other stuff, and then deliver this app or share this app with other people inside your company. So this is not an application to for a public. It's just for the company. It's applications to make your business more connected, and then you can build these apps inside this platform. Everything is connected through the Office 365. So the licensing, the user management, the security, everything is connected through the Office 365 platform. And then you can use to build these apps. And then if you build an app for a mobile, you can work offline, you can work online, you can use barcodes, camera, and everything else. This the same app can work in the web browsers. So if you want to share this application across your company, or using as an iframe inside another application, inside Microsoft Teams or anything else, you can do it. And it's quite easy to do these apps. So later on, you can go to my YouTube channel and see if there are some videos there, basic stuff telling how to create your first app. But I want to share some tips about how you can deliver these apps in a better shape, or in a way that the app will work fine and you are doing the standards, so you can see the if you need to maintain this app later on, you can do in the best way. So the first tip that I want to share with you is use name standards and make it easy to remember. What is that? So this first tip, I'll just give you this app. This is an empty app I just created. We don't have anything. We just have a screen here, an empty screen. And then if you see, let me just zoom it here to make it easier. Okay. So if you see here in the tree view, or in this left panel, we have all the components that we use in the Power Apps. So if we need to use or to create a bunch of components here in my application, so a button, a text input, an image, or whatever, all the components will be here. And then the first tip about making name standards and make it easy to remember is because when we are creating stuff here, we need to remember that this app should be maintained later on. And everything that we create here, so if I create a button inside my page, you'll see that the structure will be here. So a label, I can put an image, I can put a lot of components here. And if you see, when we are creating these components, the name standards are pretty basic. It's just the name of the component and a counter. And if you think about huge applications, because Power Apps is not only for forms, it's not only for basic applications to input data or something like that. You can build a bunch of powerful applications that will connect the whole structure, the whole a whole part of your process or your company, or the whole company, through the processes that you have inside your company. And then with all these components and all the screens that the application will have, you need to think about how I can make it easier to search for it later, or to maintain, or to remember that I did this button to that use case. So the naming convention here, the naming standards here are really, really, or very, very important, because when you are creating, it's fine. It's difficult to remember that I need to come here and then change it. It's just easier to just create, push the button to around, put the names and everything else, and start working. And then we forgot to do in a better and the best way, so we can later on, if I need to search across the screens, I can search here. Okay, I have a button to save the data related to orders, or to a purchase order, or whatever, a product. And then it will be difficult if we don't do that. It will be really difficult to maintain this. And also, we need to think about the colleagues that are working with this app, right? So, as a developer, I have a lot of experience working with projects that many people work through the same project, and then it's not a good thing when we need to go to a code and read that code and try to understand what the people wrote there, and also to understand what the hell the variable have that name. So this is something that we need to think about the colleagues. You need to think about your friend that will take a look at your code or your app later on, to make sure that he understands what you mean with that component, or with that variable, or whatever, and make sure that the process of maintaining this is not a pain for anyone, because we don't like that. So let's think to not do it for the other peoples as well. Okay. So one tip that I give you is to put name standards. We don't have anything about it in the documentation. So if you search for name standards or naming conventions, you don't have that. We don't have that in the Microsoft documentation. So this is pretty personal, but I would like to tell you to do it with your team. So in my team, we just put the initial of the component, so btn in case it's a button, for example. And then if this button will save product information or product data, we can put btn save product data with the uppercase in or the capital in the name of the word. And then this is fine. It's easier for us to understand, okay, I am in the screen, so I can put here we can put a name, a big name. I would tell you to not use space. It's just to not give a huge name for it. So like product management, for example, or something like that. And then I know that in the product management screen, we have a button to save product data. And this is important not only because of that, but also because if we have other screens, here I can use the same thing. So I can use this button to do something using the values that are inside the other components in the other screens. So if I go to the formula here and put btn, see, we can see the other components that are in the other screens. So the components will have the same name across the whole application. So it's better to give a name that will make sense for you to remember later on. So this is a good tip, and I will tell you to do it. It's really important. Okay. So this is the first thing. Remember to use naming standards or naming conventions, and write in a way that it's easier to remember, is easy to remember later on, or to make a documentation about it. So if you have a bunch of button one, image three, image 10, or whatever, will be really hard to maintain this, to make sure that you wrote in the right way. And another thing is, try to do it when you start developing, not later, because if you have a lot of formulas across the application using the same component, And if you have image view, and then you are working on this for 3 days or so, and then you remember, okay, oh, I need to move this image to img1 or whatever. And then when you remember to do it, you need to remember to move all the application. So if you are using the same component across other screens or formulas, you need to change all over the place. So it's better to get the discipline to, when you add the component, you already change the name by clicking here and going rename, or in the right panel, you have the name here as well. So you have two places that you can change this name, and it's really important to do it when you are building the app. Okay, so this is my first tip. So the second tip is work on the UI and visual identity for your app. This is really important because if you see in the Power Apps, you have only some themes here. So you can change the theme, and then the color will change, or the color of the components will change as well. But the style of this application is not that really good. So there's a lot of people that are thinking about, okay, Power Apps is just to build some basic apps and some not a huge app with a different design and make it really beautiful or something like that. So people are thinking that, okay, it's just some buttons and things like that, so it's, we can't do much. And this is not true. You can build beautiful apps and think about themes. And a good way to do it is, a good example that I can give you, it's here we have templates that Microsoft created to make it easy for you to start doing Power Apps. So it's good to try out, just to know how this works and how you can customize your app, but also to understand how the layout can be. So we have a lot of different layouts here that we can create. So I will create just one to give you an example. But some of these examples here give you different designs, so you can think differently of the basics. And not only that, another tip that I will give you is to create your own theme. And this is not something that Microsoft gives you. You need to develop this, and it's not easy, but it's a good thing to make if you are thinking about making, for example, a light version of your app and a dark version of your app. And then if the user click in dark mode, it will make it black or something. And if you click in light mode, it will be white or gray or something like that. So you can build this. And it's good to think about it, not only because when you are trying to develop this theme, it's good to think ahead. So if you do this theme, it's a good thing to start doing in the first time. So if you are creating the app right now, it's good to think about the theme right now and start doing the app around this theme, not later on, because later on will be the same thing as I mentioned about the names of the components. So if you need to change the color, the fonts, or whatever for your entire application later on, will be pretty hard because you don't have like a CSS that you can just change it and will change across. So this is something really important. So I just created another app here, and you can see that there is a different layout. So we can see that there is a menu here. So it's a little bit different from the usual. We have a menu here. So you can use the templates as a sample. So you can think about different designs, but also we can create this theme thing that I mentioned. So I'll just move to the blue again. And then my tip will be to create a screen. And this screen you will call theme. And this screen, you will put all the components that you think that you use in your app. So for example, I'm pretty sure that I will use a button. I'm pretty sure that I will use a label for a form, for example. I'm pretty sure that I will use a text input, for example. I'm pretty sure that I will use a pen input or something like that. So And I will create like this for title and for subtitle when I have a form. So you can put all the components here. And then one thing that we will do is the name. The name convention here, it's really important. So I'm gonna give a name here for BTN theme. Here I'll put LBL from label, title, theme, LBL, subtitle, theme. I'm just mentioning theme in the name of the components because we will reuse these components in the other places. So we can use the same color, the same everything for the components. So here we will put txt theme, and these we can call and theme. So we have one of each component that I would like to use. And what I will do is I will change the layout for this button. So I think that the color should be red, and then the font will be Segoy UI, and the size will be 16 and will be lighter. So I want that all the buttons have the same color and the same font and the same um, structure here, if it will be bold or not, and the font size and everything else. So what I will do right now when I'm building, so I just finished my theme. I will just change this because this is the title. I would like to use Segoy UI as well, and the title will be 20 and will be bold, and the subtitle will be Segoy UI, will be 14 and will be lighter, and the color will be gray. Okay, so I have, and I can change the text here just to use an example, title sample, and give a size for it, and this will be subtitle sample. Okay, so I have two things here in my theme screen. And then in all the other applications or all the other screens that I have a button here. So I would like to use the same theme as this one here. So what I will do is I will click in this button, and I can do it from here, from the properties panel. So this is a property, all the properties of my component that I selected. So I selected this button here, and all the properties will be here, like the background color, the color of the text, the font size, the font name, everything will be here. All the properties will be here. So here is for the props. And sorry, I'm not good with pens. Okay, so I can do from here, or I can do from the right panel, because from the right panel I can see the properties, and in the advanced one, it's the one that I will give you as an example. We can find all the properties for this component. So I can go to the advanced, and then I can either go to each one. So I have hover fill, that it's the fill color when we are hovering in the button, or the fill that it's the background color. So I can see all the properties here. And then I can search as well. So I would like to change the background color. And as I can see here, it's a RGB color right now, but I can also change this one. And what I will do is I will point out to the btn theme.fill. So this will get the fill from the button. So right now, if I came here and I change to blue, this button will change as well. So this is a good thing to move or to change and select the color of the things in a centralized way. This is the only way that you have right now, at least, to make it in a way that will be easier for you to change later on. So you can do it for all the properties. So if you have the property for the font size or the font name, and you want to do the same thing here, you can go to font. And then I can see that the font right now it's Open Sans, but I don't want to use that. I want to use the same thing as the PTN theme, and then I can select font. So right now it's the Sequoia UI. So if I go here and change the Sequoia UI to Lato Black, here will be changed as well, as you can see here on top. So you can do it for all the properties. So the font weight will be the same, BTN theme dot font weight. And then you can do the same thing for size. Size here is 15. You can put BTN theme dot size. And this is a good thing because right now, if I have a bunch of screens using buttons and the customer came to me and say, okay, Douglas, I need to change this button to another color or to another font or to another style, you can just change the style here and the style will be changed across the application with just one click. So if you don't do that, and if you have a lot of components with different styles and different configurations, and you need to make a standard for all of them, will be pretty hard. So this is a tip that I would like to give you guys because it's really important to make like this. Okay. So as I did for buttons, you can do the same thing for labels and everything else. So you just need to think about how you will work with the UI and make a visual identity for your app, creating themes. And as I did like this, you can also create in a way that the theme will be changed. And then this color, instead of being like this, you can use formulas to get this from a database. And in this database, you have all the themes that you want, and or for a collection here, or for a variable, you can build this in a more advanced way. Okay, so this is just an example of how you can do it. And it's good to make like this because then you can just copy and use in the other places without needing to change all over every time. And you guys know that you probably know that the user doesn't know what he wants, so he will change a lot these things. So it's good to think about it in when you are building your app to make it easier for you. Okay, so this is the second tip. The third tip is get a good knowledge about properties and functions. What is that? The Power Apps, your app will work basically by these properties that I showed to you for each component. So for each component, we have different properties that you can see in the left here, this drop down, or in the properties here in the right panel. So in both cases, you can see the properties, and it's good to know which properties we have for each type of component. So in the button, how can I know which property is used to when I hit this button to do something? I need to know which property is that. I need to know which property is when I hover the mouse in the button that you can see that the background color is a little bit different. And how is that? Which property is that? So it's good to know which properties you have here. And in the documentation, it's something that I will talk more later. But if you go to Power Apps Docs and you look for properties, you have a whole documentation about references about all the properties. And it's in Portuguese, you have also in English. And you can see all the properties for each control. So I can see that I have this component. So the gallery, if I click in the gallery, I can see which limitations I have, which key properties I have, and also the additional properties. And this is really important to know because you basically will work with these components. The application itself, it's made by the components. So it's much more important to think about these properties and know. And you probably will, when you are building these apps, you will get that not all the properties are important, and some of them are really, really important, and you will use more often. And then you just need to think about it and use this documentation to know, okay, this template field, what is that? The background color of the gallery. Okay, So now I know that if I want, I would like to change the background color of this gallery is this property that I will use. And then I can just go to this property here in the component and change it in the way that it will fit in my need, okay? So this is pretty important to know these properties and also the functions. So in the same way that we have these control reference and properties, and as you can see here, there's a lot of common properties that you can see. We also have the Power Apps functions. And what is that? Basically, we have a reference here for functions. Is this formula reference? Same thing. So you have a bunch of functions here. So if you are not used to, Power Apps works with functions. So it's not a code. It's not something that you will use C# or JavaScript or something like that. It's a formula, basically. So the formulas are called functions here in Power Apps. So as if you know about Excel or something like that, you have the formulas there, and then here it's pretty much the same. We have formula bar here, and here, as we can see, and just to give you an example, we have a property called onSelect. This is the property responsible for when we click in the button, this will be triggered. And then right now we just have a function called false because we don't do anything. Basically, this is to do nothing. And we are doing nothing here when we are clicking. But if I want to put something or some action here, the action will be this function and will be placed here. So all the actions that we want to use, all the formulas that we want to use are functions, whatever the name you want to use, the action itself will be here. And then you need to know which functions you have. So for example, if I want to notify a user, so put a message on the top when something happened, I can just use a formula or a function called notify. And then I know that the notify, if you go to the function and you know the name of the function, all the names will be in English. So even if you have the Power Apps in Portuguese or using the browser in Portuguese or other languages, the functions will be always in English. And then when you put the name of the function here and open a parenthesis, you have this information here. And this information is, okay, in this case that is notify, the parameter that he's asking is the text that will be displayed in the banner. So you have a help here. So it's really good to use that. So it's waiting for a text. So I can see this is a notification. And then as you can see, you have this comma and then 3 dots. And this means that the function has more properties available or more parameters available. And then this is the notification type in this case. And the notification type is the style of the banner to be displayed. So it will give you some more information. So it's pretty easy to understand what the function does and what the function expects from you to give to it. So I'll use the success, for example, and then I can just close the parentheses. And then if I run this application right now and click, the notification will pop out here. So how can I know which functions I can use in each case or whatever? You can go to these functions and then look up. Like when I click in a button, I would like to open a pop-up or save something in a data source or something like that. You just need to think about the functions, look the functions here, and think about, okay, I would like to go to another screen from one to another. So you can see, change which screen is displayed. So you click in the navigate and check how this works, which functions it will let you do, and which properties and everything else. So this is a good documentation that I would like to point out for you. So get a good knowledge about properties and functions. This is very important because basically the components and the properties and functions are the whole application. So the one more tip is to use components. What is the use components thing? We have in Power Apps something called components, and now I will use in the advanced settings. I have this experimental thing. Components is available already, and we have here, as we have screens, we have this components thing. And what is this components thing? Think about your app and think that you have two screens, or you have more screens here. And then you would like to have a header here with the image, the name of the user, the logo from your company, and this will be repeated all over your application. So all the screens have the same header. So instead of creating this thing and copying and paste in all the screens, you can create a component that will have this header, will give you this header, and then you can just use the same component all over. This is another thing related to reusable things, or reuse the things inside your app. So this is pretty important. So what I will do here is to create a new component. So I'm creating the component that I will call header. And in this component, I will just give a greater size. And I'll just put the height like 115. And then here I will put the image, and this image will be from the user. So I can use user image, and then this will give my image. And then I can also put a radius here to make like a circle. And then I can put a label here, and this label will be my name. So user name. And then if I use this user, will be the current user that's using your app. So it's fine to use that because if it's someone else that it's using, will be adapted. So here I can put the email, for example. So I have this, something like this. And then, okay, I can change the layout. I can put it in a bold, and good. I have my header here. And the good thing is that right now, instead of copying and paste all over the place, and then if I need to change, I need to change all over the place, I can just go to insert, ask for custom, and use the header. And use the same thing here. I can go to custom, use the header. And then the good thing is that if I need to change, I will change the component itself. So I would like this to be light gray, and then it will be changed in the two places. And the good thing about components is that you can give properties for this component, so I can pass some information from the application to the component and receive the output as well. If I want to create something, I can create custom properties here. And then when I use the property, I can send some data from here to the screen, and from the screen to the component, and then work with this data. So this is really good to use, because you will be reusing things and changing a centralized place. So this is very important. Okay. So use components, try out, and it's good that you can
Douglas, can I
organize work. So if
can I
you do
ask you
something
can I ask
with
you something, Douglas?
sorry,
Can I ask you something?
yeah,
Can you hear me?
yes,
Two quick questions. The Marina is asking in the chat, like when you build an Android app, you publish that in the Play Store traditionally. How maybe you are going to explain that later in the talk, but how it works in Power Apps. You are going to generate an app to publish somewhere, how it works. And the second question is, considering many developers can work together in the same project, and considering there is no code at all in the process, how we can control the versions and manage the source control for the app.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. So the first question about the publishing it, when you are developing a Power App, doesn't really matter if it's Android or iPhone, because the app will work inside the Power Apps application. So if you go to your phone, you can go to the Play Store or the Apple Store, and you will download the app called Power Apps. And then when you log in into this Power Apps application, it will ask for your Office 365 account. And then when you are logging with your account, all the apps that you have access will be there. So it's not something that is published for the public. So this is something, as I mentioned in the beginning, is something to develop to your company. So the user that will use your app will log into the company's account, and then all the apps that this user have access that has access will be displayed there in this store. So it's like a company store, not a public store, as Play Store or Apple Store. So Power Apps is for the company that is using the Office 365 or so. Okay. So when you are building these apps, think about it. This is something for internal management, not external or public external users. About the second question, when you are developing a Power Apps, if I want someone to work in the same Power App that I'm working right now, it's not possible right now. Microsoft is working in different ways to do it, but the way that we can do it right now, it's and we are using the same structure here in our company, is that we can create one app that is the structure, and then if we need to 2 or 3 developers work at the same time in the same application, we can create one application. We create the theme, we create the data source and everything that the application will use, and then we duplicate this app for these 2 or 3 developers, and they will build the apps. And then after finishing a functionality or a screen or something like that, and it's tested and everything, you can copy these things and paste here inside this other app or this centralized app, and make the versioning there. And about the versioning, every time that we save the application, it will generate a version. So if you need to go back or restore something or some version, you can do it easily. It's not a big problem about it. The only problem is that if you need to develop 2 or 3 or more developers at the same time, you can't do it. The way that we do it right now is to create the structure of the app, uh, let this app as the main one, and then we duplicate them, and then with this duplicated thing, we distribute through the developers, and they start developing, testing, and doing everything. And then when they finish, they can put in or copy and paste inside the main app. So this is the way that we can do it right now. So we don't have a way to develop at really the same time. If I shared, or if you try to open this app because you have access, for example, if you try to open this app, it will give you a message telling Douglas is working on this app. You can't do it. So ask him to close, and then you can work. So the other way that we are doing right now, so that could be a tip as well, is to do it like this. Create the main app, create the data sources and the structure that you want, and then duplicate and then develop across, and then copy and paste and put it in the main app. And the versioning will be always when we are saving the app. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, so I need to run because there is still 5. Think about the data structure. This is really important about applications itself, not Power Apps only, but all the applications that you are working on. It's good to think about the data structure that you use, because when you are developing Power Apps and you have data sources here, and one other tip that I will give you later on is about the data sources. You need to think about how the data will be structured in the way that you use this data here in the application. Because when you are opening your app, all the connections will be triggered, and then the data will be refreshed or and will be fetched from the places. So if we have a bunch of connections, a bunch of data being downloading inside the app, and if I need to work offline, for example, everything needs to be in a good way or structured in a good way, because other than that your app will be slow. And there's a lot of people there are a lot of people talking with me about performance issues, and the performance thing is always related to the structure that you are doing the data. So if you are doing a BI or something like working with Power BI, for example, and if you don't do a good data structure, probably your Power BI will be slow. If you are developing an application and you don't think about this data structure, it will be slow. And Power Apps is not different. You need to think about it. And even more because your app probably will work in a phone or in a tablet that you don't know the configuration, you don't know the memory that are there, and the operational system that are there. So it's something that you need to think when you are starting to build your app. Because if you don't think of that, your app will be slow. This is by definition will be like this. And not only your app, your applications in general will be. So you need to think about the data structure. This is a important tip. Use integrations. What is that? We have a bunch of ways to integrate things in Power Apps. One of them are the connectors. This is a good thing about Power Apps, and not only Power Apps, but Power Platform in general, Power BI and Power Automate as well. You can use connectors to connect your app with different applications. So here I can see, for example, I can connect my Power Apps with Azure DevOps. I can connect with Teams. I can connect with Office 365 users. So for example, if I try to use a connection here to Office 365 users, what I will do is I will be able to use the Office 365 users here as a parameter to do something. And then with that, I have a lot of functions that I can use. So I can get, for example, the name of the manager. I'll probably won't have one, but you can get, and you can use properties. So I can use Office 365 users, not my profile, ID, and now I'll get my manager if I have one. So this is pretty much connected. For me, I don't have a manager, so that's why it's empty. But I can have this information, this kind of information, because I'm using the integration with the connectors. And one other thing is you can integrate these Power Apps with Power Automate. And Power Automate, it's a way that you can build workflows, integrated workflows with a lot of different applications as we have in these connectors. And you can integrate Power Apps with Power Automate. So if you have, for example, approvals that you want to use in your Power App and you don't have approvals here, you don't have any controls for it or any components to use approvals, but you can use the approvals from Power Automate using the integration. So it's important to know which types of integration you can build. And that's why I always tell that Power Apps is a huge platform. And it's not only to build like applications to just to play out or something like that. No, you can build really huge and extremely powerful apps with that. So it's really important to know which integrations you can use and try to use it. Know well the data sources available. This is the next one about if you have a bunch of connectors here, you need to know that you can use, for example, Teams, and then I can connect to Teams. And it's good to know which types of actions I can do with Teams. So if I'm using Teams, I'd like to, when I click in this button, I will ask for Microsoft Teams. And then I can see that I have an action to post a notification in a channel. So sometimes we think, okay, I need to develop an application to post on Teams or do a Power Automate to post on Teams. No, you have the same data sources that you have in Power Automate or Power BI, you have here. So if you know well which types of connectors you have and which actions are available for you, you can do it from here directly in the Power Apps. So it's very important to know which connectors you have, and it's more than 300, and which actions you have for each one of these connectors, because you have a lot of actions here for each one of them. And only if the actions here are not enough for you, then you think about developing something or developing a Power Apps, a Power Automate or something, and then integrate. Okay, so know well the data sources available, the actions, and how this works, how this get the data, how this post the data, and everything else. This is very important. Use parameters on your app. There is a good way to send some parameters to your app. And the good thing is that when you publish this app for web or for mobile, you can send some parameters. And what is this parameter? The parameter is something that you can send on top. So I can send parameter 1 equals something. And I can use the param, this is a function, to get this parameter and work with that. So for example, if you have your application inside another website, inside a page in your website, and then you want that when the user clicks in the client name, the product name, or something like that, it will open your app, your web app, sending this product name here as a parameter. You can get this product name and then filter the app already with the data related to this product. So this is very powerful because then you can send some parameter to your app, and your app can handle this parameter and do something with that, with this information. So this is very powerful. Try to use it. It's just param, and then you can put the name of your parameter here, like parameter 1 in this case. And then with this parameter 1 here inside, you'll be able to get the data that is the product name. And you can put more of them just using the ampersand here. So this is very, very powerful. Okay. Use monitor to analyze requests. This is something else that is really important. And this is something that it's in experimental, is an experimental feature. You can go to here and then monitor. And the monitor is something that you can open to see the requests. So if I have a data, and if I'm opening or sending a request when I'm clicking this button. So if I, for example, I would like to connect with SharePoint, and then I would like to just store the data somewhere. So I can get a site here. I can get a test site or development training, for example. And then I have training here. And then I just would like to collect some data. So I will collect to train. And then I will send the title as training 01. So when I'm doing this, I'm working with this connection. So I'm sending a request. So if I play this right now, this will send some data to this list, and we'll try to save it in this case. And then a request was asked. So a request was done here. So I will try to do something more. So I can click sometimes here. And then I can see that the requests are here. The operation was to create a row in the data source treinamentos. And the data that was sent was this one. The response size was this one. I can see the status. I can see the duration. So with that, we can monitor, we can analyze if the requests are good and if something went wrong or something like that. and it's important to analyze the performance of your app. So use the monitor. It's a free feature. It's an experimental one that you can use here. And I need to run. The latest one is accessibility. Try to create your apps thinking about accessibility. If you are doing an app, you need to think that if the user jumps on using the tab from this one to this one, the order, it's important. And there's a lot of things that you can use in this accessibility. There's a lot of tips that Microsoft gives you to make your app more accessible for different scenarios or different persons that will work with your app. This is very important because you are building things that will be used for many people with many different ways to do it or difficulties or not. So you need to think about how this app will work better with these persons, so or with these people. So this is very important to think of. Okay, so this is the last one, and I have a bonus tip that is engage with community and docs. In Power Apps, if you go to powerapps.com, so powerapps.microsoft.com, in the bottom, you can see that there is a community stuff here in the bottom, documentation and also community. In the community, you can ask questions there, you can give ideas and also reply if you have experience. And then there you will be able to see a lot of stuff that can help you when you are building your app. So use the community there. Use the docs, the documentation. Use the community that we have, the CaquiCoders, and a lot of other communities that we have that are talking about Power Apps, and not only Power Apps but also all the other Microsoft applications. So engage with these communities and docs. This is very important to know and to be aware of everything. So any if you want to see, here is the Power Apps that I made for this application. I'll give you again my contact information, and if you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you for this time. Hope that helped you to understand some of the stuff. All this information will be available for you guys later on in CaquiCoders channel. So feel free to reach me out if you have any questions or anything. That's it.
So thank you, Douglas, for the great talk and for taking part of that. It's a great content, and I can see a lot of a huge demand for Power Apps in Europe and in many companies in Brazil. I think the developers and the companies are understanding properly recently how powerful is Power Apps actually. So because you can the users can build the apps themselves if they have little knowledge in or advanced knowledge in tech stuff. So, and I don't know if that's the intention by Microsoft, but definitely it's much easier right now to build apps. And I know that Microsoft launched if you remember, the Web Matrix
Mm-hmm.
Visual Studio. Like there was an intention, known intention to give the power to users to build their own apps friendly, but it's not like Power Apps at all.
Yeah,
I think
and there's
it's a
one thing that
great tool.
there's a lot of things that people are talking about, like, oh, so Power Apps is not for developers. Not at all. For Power Apps is also for developers, because there's a lot of things that we will need to develop a lot of logic to make it happen. And using Power Apps, we can use these connectors and everything else that will we will be able to deliver things fast. And then we can think of, okay, if the Power Apps doesn't the components and everything else is not enough for me, then I can build on top of it, and then just concerned. I just need to be aware of developing things that are really complex or something that the platform doesn't give for us. So it's good also for developers. It's not only for business users, but in fact, for business users, it's good to have a tool that will give them a way to develop things without needing a developer.
So thank you so much, Douglas. We are going to start the second presentations related to Azure Cognitive Services. Have a good presentation, Jose. And if
Thank
someone
you.
has any questions, please leave in the channel.
So let me share my screen with you. Okay. Yep. Okay. All of you can see my screen. You
Yes,
can send a
I can
message
see your
on the
screen.
chat. Okay.
Yes, that's
So thank you all guys for being here on this session, even in this tough situation around the world. So, but we can do our best to on this session. So let me introduce of this topic. This topic is about the optical recognition, it's about the OCR technique on the uh, artificial intelligence. There is the great opportunity to you keep in touch on this techniques and on this approach to improve your knowledges about this trend topic on this moment. So let me change the slide. So I will introduce myself. So I'm José Roberto Araújo. I am Microsoft certified and I'm a member of MTAC, is the organization uh, of volunteers in Brazil that the main focus is on to share our knowledge around the community in Brazil. So, and I am a self-trained engineer in Farfetch, and I have the training company called Emerging Code. So let me introduce you all in this theory of human being evolution. So to you all understand what's happening under the hood of the cognitive services, you need to understand what happened on our evolution during all this time. So the human being evolution study includes scientific disciplines such as linguistics. Linguistics is the greatest studies to understand how the idiom, how the language have been changing during all of this time. So imagining you that the origin, the main origin of the language was in some place, some spot on this planet, right? And uh, during the time during the people will be evolving their interacting their relationships. The language will be changing, right? So but why the language needs to change? Because the culture, because the interactions, because the communications, the way of the communication. So and anthropology studies that is how different groups in that time could be interact with each other and how their relations evolve over the time. So is there another kind of understanding that you need to keep inside of your mind to understand why artificial intelligence can help us to have a productivity, to have fast things happening around us, and how artificial intelligence can suggest us the right things that we need. So, and scientific and genetic studies, which looking for understanding how the human brain works and how each data is transformed in information inside in our mind. So to artificial intelligence, to machine learning do the things that they are doing now, they need to be training a lot using a bunch of data, a bunch of streams around the world, and professionals guys needs to teach these machines to understand what's the pattern that happening behind that texts, images, videos, or whatever the streams that were processing in our data in the data centers that it spreads around the world. So what is cognition? Cognition is a part of the main part of the artificial intelligence, and using the cognition, machine learning mechanisms and systems, and deep learning understandings and researches on these departments will are trying to bring the human cognition to put inside of the machines. So machines just only understand what's happening behind of the image if the cognition will be put there, right? So physical function active is acquisition of knowledge. So the word cognition has origin in rights of Plato and Aristotle. So it is not the new studies. Cognition is a old studies that scientists around the world doing studies a lot. So, and the cognitive study tries to cover a bunch of disciplinary areas, like to understand texts. Texts, you need to understand the languages, and the languages you need to understand the cultures and accents. And another disciplinary area is about the understand what's happening on the image. So on the image you have a lot of objects. So but how machines will understand, will detect, will identify what the kind of that object? I don't know. If the machine just look on the image without any understanding or any pattern or any training before, the machine can't understand what happened on that image or on that each one frame on the video, right? What is the computer vision? The computer vision is a deep researching that's happening using all of the other topics that we said before on this session. So computer vision is the one kind of cognitive services that you can find on the cloud players. So you can find on Google, on Microsoft, on IBM, computer vision. So, but the cognitive services, you can find a different kind of cognitive services here on this Microsoft site, right? And here you can the main kind of one decision, and in decision area you can find anomaly detector you can use to identify some kind of fraud, right? And content moderator and language, speech, vision, and web search. So we have today a bunch of different kind of cognitive services in Azure platform. So, and computer vision is just one of them. But what we can do using computer vision? So, computer vision will understand what's happening on the images or on the videos using all of the cognitive understanding and pattern that were trained before in that machines, right? But specifically talking about the Azure Cognitive Services, you will can find an API that will support you to use this all of algorithms behind of these platforms and the systems, right? But when you send an image to your uh, I will try to explain an example. So when you use your smartphone and open the Expensify or another kind of app to balance or to follow your Wests, you sometimes you try to capture some images from the invoices or from billings, right? And at that moment, you put your cell phone on that paper and take the photo. So the photo will be captured to inside of the smartphone, and that action will transform that action in a stream, in an image, right? In a binary file. So, but the app will try to apply some techniques, some algorithms, some APIs like that to try to extract the most of information that this API can do. Why? Because the computer vision was trained to identify the characters, the patterns, or the texts that are on that paper, and this will be transformed in something like that. It's not it's was not be transformed in something like that, but all of the process behind of the computer vision will use the things like that. When you put your smartphone for on the image around you, the smartphone or the app on the smartphone will try to identify the pattern around you, right? And will be extract the information or the data from that frames like that. So if you can see on this image, you can see a bunch of blue frames and red frames. But for you, a human being like me, can quickly identify what is the pattern that we are talking about. The pattern is the red frames is about the people, and the blue frames is about the cars, right? But how machines, how the bare metal, how the systems behind the bytes and the hardwares can identify, can understand this bunch of objects, this ton of objects, right? Is happening due to the training, the all of human expertise that are being put inside of the machine, and this machine are being trained to identify all of these objects, and this is the process that will be transform all of this metadata in data, and this data will be transformed in information, right? Is a really interesting thing to think about, because when you look to image like a human being, it's is so simple to identify the frame on the wall, or the light is turn on or turn off, or the people is came from India or not. So because it's about our experience, our learnings, our understandings. It's about a cognitive actions that were happening day by day in our lives up to here, right? It's normal, it's simple for us, but to machine, but to find and to see this happening inside of the bare metal on the systems is not normal. It's not simple. It's a very complex process, complex studies that are being that are doing to do that. So the specific part of the computer vision that we are talking about today is about OCR, optical character recognition. One more time, I will repeat the same thing because it's something like obviously obvious, but it's not obvious to explain something like that to machines. But imagine that you can see on this image a pen that there is an optical point up on top of the pen, reading all of these letters, the characters, right, on the paper, and how this pen can identify the O is O, the P is P, the C is E, and the L is L. So why or how? Because inside of this pen there are a lot of hardwares, and there is a specific algorithm that will apply some techniques to recognize using cognition to identify what is the pattern that word there is that word has, and what is that word. So, and this pen will capture all of this image to put inside of the store of this pen, and this will put inside of the machine learning or the artificial intelligence platform like Azure Cognitive Services to understand and to extract all of these texts to put in a big data database, right? Something like that is possible. So what is OCR? OCR is the things that I explained before, but what we can do using OCR techniques. You can bring text from PDF, or you can extract all of the texts in the book to the PDF, and you can digitize contracts, vouchers, or payments identification. So, and the OCR is the old one techniques that you had in the past, but this technique is not deprecated, because in the past we had a bunch of research for to try to understand how we can bring the human experience, the human brain actions and connections in on our brain to put that in the machines, in the computers. But what is about this image? This image this image can't explain by itself. But these three icons on this image can tell you that we can scale our code to try to capture the most of the things that we can do. Use all of those API on the cloud providers. So the blue one here is about the Azure functions. The yellow one is about the Lambda, and the third one is about the serverless on the Google Cloud. So Azure functions is our main focus on these sessions, right? When we talk about to use machine learning or artificial intelligence services like cognitive services on Azure, we need sometimes to scale our platform. So because imagining you that we have drones spread on the city, capturing a bunch of images, taking a lot of pictures from different places on the city. And all of these pictures will send to cloud platform, in this case to Azure, right? So how you can extract in a distributed system, and how you can scale your platform using the AI services. AI services will do for you the basic work, right? The basic job. What is the basic job? They will apply some algorithms on the situation, and they will, for example, analyze the sentiments or analyze the patterns on the video, or the patterns on the license plates. It's the things like that the cognitive services will do for you. But what about the metadata? How can you extract the metadata, and how you can scale your platform to do these things in a huge wave of data, or the streams? So you can do that today using Azure Functions. Azure Functions is the great opportunity to you blow your mind and try to put yourself out for your comfort zone, because this kind of architecture or this kind of technology will force you to rethink how you can build your designs, system designs, and how you can deploy and connect each one of this part of the system that you are trying to build. Here is this example. If you complete your Azure Functions code, you can just deploy on the Azure, and the Azure will try to do the hard work for you, spreading this code for the data centers around the world, and you can't and you don't need to worry about that. Why? Because Azure will ensure that this infrastructure and distribution and DevOps operations will be guaranteed to you as well. You need to Azure, Microsoft, when talking about serverless, Azure Functions serverless, try to send a message for each one of us that we need and we must to keep focus on our business logic on the functions, right? And let me show you this image. Is something like that. We showed it before on this site about the Azure Functions services. Oh, sorry, the Azure Cognitive Services. And I will try to show you a demo. And in this demo, we will send an image to Azure Storage, right? And our Azure Functions will get this image and will apply the Azure Computer Vision on this image, extracting all of these texts from there, and we're storing all of this data in Cosmos DB. Cosmos DB is another one database built from Microsoft, right? But Cosmos DB is not our main focus on these sessions, but will support us to store all of the data. Let me open the Visual Studio for you, and we have our solution here. And Azure Functions is the simple project that you can see on the Visual Studio. Is just when you create the Azure Functions project, we will have just a CS project and a class that will work as functions for you. And here we have a function that I named extract invoice data. And here we have a bunch of parameters. These parameters is about the input and output data, right? And we have the first one is about the blob trigger, and the blob trigger will read this thing here. Let me connect for you. Yeah. That configuration, that parameter configuration will read these blob containers and will try to locate invoices. And invoices will is about the container of the images about the invoices, right? And this is the configuration. Name is the parameter of the whatever the image that I put there. this name will capture the name of the image. If I put there a.gpg, this name will be a.gpg, right? And Cosmos DB is about the output parameter. So output parameter is not can be just only Cosmos DB, but you can put here different kinds of the services that you can have in the Azure platform. So Azure Kill, Azure Table Storage, or Cosmos DB, or put here the endpoint to another Azure functions. So, and here, as I said, you all, here is the authenticate of my configuration of the computer vision services. You need to go to Azure platform and create your cognitive services, and there you will be find you will find the key that you can need to use here, right? And after that you can connect on that services. And after that, you will extract all of the text from that image, right? Here I have my authenticated client, and here I have the stream of the file that was extracted or captured from blob storage. And here I just put some logs to follow the work of these Azure functions on the portal. This behavior I will show you all. So, and here I have the OCR result. This is a class from the Microsoft Azure Cognitive Services Vision computer vision models. Is not my class, my one class. Is about this, the SDK class. And here I have the transforms results to string is about how you can read all of this data, all of these streams, all of these strings, and how you can transform all of them to the readable way for someone else. So here, as you could see, I have a local function, right? Where I configured this project to read my local storage, Azure storage. You can install local Azure storage to play locally and try yourself and try to understand how this technologies and techniques works for you, but you can't but you don't need to create the Azure function. Azure functions is fixed on my mind and I can't forget this name. So you don't need to create Azure account to have blob containers or queues or tables. So you can install the Azure Storage Explorer is the client, but you can install the Azure Storage locally. And here is about the Cosmos DB. Cosmos DB is another technology that you can install locally. You don't need, again, to have an Azure account to have access for the Cosmos DB. So let me try to configure this to locally, and I will try to you all this happening locally. Yep, here I don't have any documents. Let me see there. Yeah, I have one. Here I don't have any more. I will delete this. Let me try to, okay. Okay, I have here. So, okay, my local environments not work as well. So I will try to put my cloud configurations to, because we don't lost our time to configure all of these environments to show you. But I have this environment configured to look to cloud environment. But I need to see the other project using the cloud configuration. So while my another Visual Studio opens, we have some questions to answer for? Okay. So here we have configured this that we have this configuration pointing it to out to my account on Azure. Yeah. And I will execute my project locally. Azure Functions is not work only on Visual Studio Enterprise or Community, right? You can try to play with Azure Functions. Use your Visual Studio Code. Okay. Here, okay, I will show you this folder that has a lot of images, but I will send this specific image to show you all how all of this process is working. I will do this change. Let me put here. Okay, we don't have any file here, and let me put there. As you can see, okay, as you can see on this console application, this console application is not built my own. It's about the Azure Functions feature, right? And as you can see, we read the fatura underline amanhecer space hyphen space scope space hyphen space scope dot jpg, and OCR local image performing OCR string language is this text angle, and you can have a lot of information from that image. And okay, Roberto, uh, how uh, uh, how was stored all of this data structure in the Cosmos DB? So let me show you again. Here is my Cosmos DB from this my account. And here I have this document. Let me see. And here, language FR. It's a French language, right? And here you can have all of the text from that invoice or that billing. And how is possible? So I will open to see you, right? It's a billing paper that my one shop, right? I shop something and I bring my billing paper, my invoice, and I took this picture from that paper, and I just copy this image to have bunch of this data. Why you did a lot of this copy from the same picture? Because we will see this process working in Azure now. Let me show you. Yep. Here we have the Cosmos DB data export in Azure. Okay. We have invoice database, items collections, and items with a lot of documents that was did before. So I will delete this because it's the one that we extracted before in our early example, right, on Visual Studio. And I will refresh there, and we don't have any document there. Yeah. And here we have our computed vision, and here you have your key and your entry point. Okay. And now we have our compiled Azure Functions code. Because of that, you can't see all of the code as you saw before in this example in Visual Studio. Why we can't see this code there? Because when you publish your project from Visual Studio or from Azure DevOps or from another kind of the DevOps tool and platform, all of this code will be compiled, and the binary will be generated, and that binary will be deployed in Azure. And because of that, the deployed binary will be put here, and this is the kind of the way that you can see the all of the code, right? But I will show you something like that. I will clear. Console is the another tab that you can get control and see and manage all of the things in your specific functions, right? But logs is the important for us for now. So let me do the fun thing for you. Now we just have one file, and I will delete it because yep, I will delete it forever because I will do something like that. Let me just, oh yeah, my function is already. I will put here 59 files at once. And let's see if this Azure Functions will work for us. Let me see this manage. This function is enabled, okay. And as you can see, all of that files were extracted, were read, and all of the texts were extracted from there and inserted in the Azure's Cosmos DB. Let me refresh here, and here here you can have all of that processing steps stored here in Cosmos DB. So let me back to the presentation, and thank you for your attendance on this session. I think that this session just started inside of you all the interest to study or to start studying of the Azure Functions or artificial intelligence and computer vision and Cosmos DB, because all of these technologies will be the trend in our short future, right? And if one of you start now looking for these technologies, you will be up front from the others, right? And this is all of my social networks where you can find me, and feel free to send a message from me in Portuguese or English, you decide. So thank you so much, and let me see if one of you has any questions.
So first of all, thank you for the great presentation. Congratulations. And there were some questions related to usually if you have a service based in REST, you can consume those APIs using whatever language you want, because it's REST based, and that's the base of Azure Functions as well. So correct if I'm right, I can consume Azure Functions using whatever language I want, but I can build and develop Azure Functions only with C# or Python. Which language I can use to develop Azure Functions currently?
Currently, we have a bunch of the language supported in Azure Functions. Let me see if I can show you what of all of the language the Azure Functions support. So we can code Azure Functions in Node.js, as you can see on my screen, and C#, Python, F#, PowerShell. Let me see another one. Java, I think so. And let me
Java is
see.
something.
Yeah, yeah.
Java was
JavaScript.
was JavaScript as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Node, if I remember right, Node.js.
So you
So
have a lot of different kind of languages that you can be comfortable to use to program and to code Azure functions. And imagine you that you decided to code one Azure functions in Node.js and another one in F Sharp. So Azure Functions was built uh, from its origin based on RESTful, you can send a message by HTTP protocol from each others, right?
okay, it's pretty nice. And as you said, it's the future. So it's really important to every developer to learn the base of Azure Functions and cognitive service as well. We have an example in the first talk, like developers for crude operations won't be so necessary in the future as they are now, and developers will be more used for complex scenarios like serverless or using artificial intelligence or and other in other scenarios completely. So thank you for your presentation, and we are completing now the first event in English of CaquiCoders. We thank you everyone who participated in Saturday afternoon in this event. So that's pretty great that we have so much interest in learning new technologies in a day like that. We have a last questions made by Rafael. Cosmos DB is based on index make its queries. How can I, considering Cosmos DB is a non-relational database, how can we make queries on that? It's similar to MongoDB or other non-relational databases, or we have a different syntax for queries?
So it's a really interesting question because when we hear about the NoSQL database, we automatically think about how we can query, how we can search data inside of that different kind of database. So when Cosmos DB named before DocumentDB was was built, the Microsoft team decided to use the most SQL statement that they can do. Why do that? Because SQL statement is the most known query statements knowledge known around the world. So if you use the query in MongoDB, it's really different when you decided to query the same data in Cosmos DB. You can use the SQL statements like you query some data in Oracle or in SQL Server, respecting the little bit difference, right? Because Cosmos DB try to bring the SQL experience to us as a developers, but your learning curve will not be so high because of that. So you will use the select some fields from the document where the field A equal to some value. So it's the kind of the query that you will find in the Cosmos DB universe, right? You don't need to worry about this kind because Cosmos DB try to bring to you the SQL experience to get down your learning curve.
Yeah, and basically the query is pretty similar to relational database, but one thing we always enforce in many presentations, and I mean people ask not only me, but it's probably you as well. The mindset to create a relational database is completely different from relational one because you don't have you can use a single row a complex object. It's different from the relationship between one to multiple to many relationship, and it's pretty hard for developers who is working with SQL Server and Oracle for many years to adapt to this new way. And non-relational databases, yeah, are recommendable just for specific scenarios as well. So I can see a lot of movements that companies are using no relational databases for everything, and definitely it's not the case. So, but it's really important to understand in which scenarios it's better to use a relational database or a non-relational database. So we are finishing this event. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking part of that. We will try to have this kind of events once each 2 months or three. The idea is to give to the Brazilian community the opportunity to have contact with English and learning a new topic in technology in the same time. In the next events, we will try to mix international developers from different countries with Brazilian speakers. So feel free to submit your talks if you wanted to talk in the next events. Uh, no problem if you don't have experience as a speaker at all, because we can help you with that. Even you are not confident about your English, no problem. Everyone who is not a native English is learning English all the time. So feel free to submit your talk. Thank you so much. See you in the next event.